Hello everybody, I'm Callum at Repair Wins. Repair Wins is a very creatively named electronics repair business, and this is part 5 in the custom sleeper PC series. Now, you might call it a sleeper, you might call it a piece of rubbish, you might call it pretty flipping cool, but either way, it's my project to turn a 13-year-old Lenovo E73 computer tower, Intel Pentium, 4 gigs of RAM, 500 gig hard drive, into something that's actually useful, that's powerful, and that can be used in 2026 and ideally many years into the future, thus justifying all the time and capital that I've actually invested into this project. Anyway though, in this episode we managed to install a front fan, which ends up being a bit rubbish, that I'll replace later in the series, and that involves drilling holes in the front of the case and measuring up and fitting the fan, putting the wire through and so on. I managed to mount both the power supplies, which was a monumental feat in the real world, and part of the reason why this episode took so long to come out. Obviously everything gets reinstalled, it all gets buttoned up and put back together. There's a bunch of other little things that I do in the video as well that are slipping my mind. I do need to apologise for the editing on this one. There are some parts where the audio is a bit crackly, other parts where I have to cut in and do a piece to camera like this, and then other parts where I need to do a voiceover. I'm pretty damn new to this whole creating videos thing, as I'm sure you can gather by the fact I only have 300 subscribers. So my microphone died at one point without me realising. So I thought instead of binning all that footage and scrapping the whole series, I would just have to hastily fast forward all the clips and do a voiceover. So please bear with me. I am trying to learn and get better and do, make better videos for everybody really, so we can get this repair message spread. But either way, I'm going to stop rambling and let's get on with the episode, shall we? It's taken a huge amount of time for me to create this model, even though I had an existing model, just a TFX to ATX adapter. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to record the process, and the reason why is that I'm not really very good at making 3D models, and this took me 10 times longer to do than it would take someone who actually knows how to use the software. But either way, we've got something, and we really are cutting it fine here with whether or not this can be done. I think we're at the absolute limits, as in I literally think this screw is going to go through here and it'll be scraping. So this screw is going to go in on the outside and it's literally going to be scraping on the side of this power supply as it goes in. But that doesn't matter as long as the screw physically goes into place and everything is held down. I didn't have quite as much room to work with as I thought, because I obviously can't just make the bracket bigger because then it wouldn't fit in the PC. And if this model does end up working, fantastic. If it doesn't, we'll tweak it until we make it work, if that's even possible. But either way, I'll put a link to where you can download the model in the description, just in case this is something you happen to need. The lighting for this clip is pretty poor, isn't it? Boom, how about that? I've invested in an overhead light, and now it's 1,000 times better. You can actually see what I'm doing. And I've put an anti-slip mat down on the desk, just so I can delay the inevitable, so I don't have to replace the top of it as soon. Right then, here are our power supplies. I'm going to unplug the two of them from each other. Going to unplug the GPU. Now that they're free, let's put the computer out of the way for a moment. There we go. So it's going to be PSU 1 and 2. They're both going to go like this. If this was a standard ATX power supply, you want the fan pointing downwards towards the case. And when this screw is here, then that's exactly what's happening there. I think I've worked it out. So this goes like this, that goes like that. Then the two of them sit together, and you can see that when I, shift everything roughly into place, you can see how it might all line up. So let's put this down, let's put the bracket down, and I need to determine which screws go into the power supply, because some of them use M3 screws with a coarse thread, and others use M3 screws with a fine thread. So instead of just jamming them in and hoping for the best, I'm going to get one of each kind out and just test each power supply. Right, I can tell by looking at the threads on the inside that this is the coarse style, and yeah, it is. And then the Lightion, that's the coarse style as well. Yeah, bang on. Alright, so I'm going to get 6 screws that require the coarse thread out. 6 screws, I'll put the 7th one out of the way. So actually it might be easier to put them in the bracket first. Oh god. The template I used for the TFX side is an old model. So it's like exactly 3mm in the middle, and if you've got any experience with 3D modeling, you want to sort of make it a tiny bit bigger. You put a tolerance in. I've not done that, I've not made a tolerance, so this is going to be quite hard to actually get the screw to go in. I've added some extra zoom to the camera and I've come up with a winning method which I'm going to show you. Oh, and this came out of a Dell Optiplex, and the way I know that is that there's black paint on the back of the screw. But put it down on the desk. Electric screwdriver and just send it home, job done. Now the reason why the electric screwdriver is so good is because you need a lot of downwards pressure, and if you're putting all that pressure down and trying to rotate your wrist, it's just not going to work. Because the screw ends up pinging off. Power supply number 1 is installed, and you can see that it fits this notch nicely. As for power supply number 2, let's see. So the idea is it's going to line right up next to power supply 1. Oh, if anything, I've actually left more space between them than I needed to, look. But it was really hard to get it just right in the software when I was trying to measure. Right, so they do indeed fit together, but obviously that's not going to be as secure as it could be. And then obviously I want the 2 power supplies pressed together because that's going to give it a lot of strength. It's going to stop it from bending, look, if the 2 of them are physically sandwiched together. If this fits in the case, okay, I'll just find something to squeeze between them. But if I was redoing this, I would just chop down the bit in the middle and make it a bit shorter. And then also you can see this power supply sticks out over the top just a tiny bit. Whereas this one doesn't at any point. So at some point when I've done the rotation, I haven't quite gotten the... Oh, in fact, I can actually see it now that I'm looking. So this bit's really thin, and this bit's a bit thicker. But I may very well need to completely undo all of this and try again. Well, it's definitely getting done again. You can see I've got the 4 screws in, and they do go into place, kind of. This bottom screw here clearly isn't going to work. And then I guess conversely that top screw there isn't going to work either. Instead, I might actually just make this sort of 1 centimetre thick, make the infill quite low, and then recess all of these screw heads. So that way this piece would fit flush against the back of the case, and I wouldn't need to worry about the screws that are protruding and whatnot. Well, that bottom power supply is going to be starved there. I've shoved a candle underneath it and that's lifting it up a small amount, but because the fan protrudes a bit, it's going to be a test of how well it performs in a tropical climate on a very hot day with no air conditioning. Just think of it like that. This is a proud moment right here, so much so that I haven't even bothered plugging my mic in, but yep, things booting just as you would expect. I've got the new model. I've even branded it. I was quite pleased with that. And as promised, it's much thicker. I'm not going to bend the life out of it, but it is sturdy. And it's designed so that the screw sits flush, as you can see. Meaning that when this is screwed into the case and the screw is all the way through, the power supplies shouldn't be, this stuff shouldn't be jutting out anymore basically, so I should be able to screw it all together. And then the new bracket should just go on like this. And then same as we did last time, it can get screwed together, but you'll notice now that everything fits together a lot more nicely. The power supplies are now both together, and I think anyway it looks really, really good. So it even says repair wins limited, and the theory is I just put these 4 screws in and it will go in the computer. I'm bold enough that I'm actually going to super glue the supplies together, so I'm going to put some glue on here, some glue on there, stand it like this, and then just do that, because otherwise these power supplies, if you have a look, they can split apart, and that's not really what you want, because the power supply on the bottom is obviously going to be getting pulled away from the one at the top. But I mean, if the computer is stood upright, the theory is that won't happen, but it's a lot of strain that's going to be getting put on this connection, and it'll be easy enough to remove it after the fact if I decide that it was a silly idea. It doesn't fit. And do you know why it doesn't fit? If I line this up next to this, you might just see what the problem is. Yet look, the old model's slightly longer, because to get the power supplies together, I literally just chopped the middle down a bit without thinking because it was really late. And so now none of the holes line up, so the power supplies fit perfectly. And the screws, and 2 of the screws, oh, they'll go in fine, but then the others, well, they're not going to reach. So that means I've got to reopen Fusion and remake the model. And then after all of that, it may finally fit in the box. Ah, this is why you measure twice and cut once, I guess. Anyway, I've spared you the boring part. I've already put the new bracket on. It's just a case of seeing if it fits now. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be a bit disappointed, but I'm going to keep making the refinements and the tweaks that need to be made until it fits perfectly, and I won't show you any more of this fitment process. So either way, you'll be seeing a part that fits. So I've finally gotten the power supply installed, and I'm really happy with it. It ended up taking me 5 goes, but I've modelled something that fits perfectly. The power cable plugs in here, and there's just enough room for it to clear the side of the case. It conforms to the ATX mounting holes exactly, and it conforms to the TFX ones as well. You can see that it's pressed right against here, so you know, like a regular ATX power supply, so it's got all of that for support. And then furthermore, the one at the bottom is lifted off of the case, so there's not an easy way for me to show you, but if I take my finger and I put it beneath, there's enough room for me to put, you know, practically my entire hand under there, meaning there's plenty of airflow. And there will be enough room for this one to pull air in as well. I know it looks close to the top, but the reality is there's about 1 centimetre between the side and here. So this is finally in a position that I want it to be in, which is good. And what I'm going to do now is install the new CPU cooler, because it's arrived. So I'll unplug the CPU fan. I'm going to unplug the CPU power. Just need to cut these zip ties. I'll undo the 4 screws holding the, you know, the cooler down. Oh, and whilst I'm here, I guess I'll just cut this sticker off of this adapter because it's not needed. Right, so let's get this CPU cooler out of here then, shall we? So I'm just going to pop each one loose. Now that I've done that, I can unscrew them all. And don't just pull the cooler up, give it a twist to break the thermal paste free, and then it'll come off. So I was hoping I didn't have to remove the motherboard, but there's the existing sort of bracket, because you'll see this has got sort of threaded, it's got threaded ends, and they screw into a back plate, and the back plate is stuck on here. So there's a slim chance I can kind of pop the back plate out, and then when the back plate is popped free, I can then sort of wiggle it around and get it to slide out, but I don't think it's going to. So if I can avoid removing the motherboard, obviously I will, because it's a big faff, but I don't think I'm going to get away with it, unfortunately. Yeah, as predicted, I don't think it's going to slide free. But maybe I can just leave the back plate under there. I mean, it's not going to cause any trouble. It's probably not going to short against anything. But I think that's a bit lazy, so I'd better just remove the motherboard, hadn't I? So in order to do that, I'll unplug the GPU, which, by the way, has been working flawlessly since I installed it. And this dual power supply solution is working fine as well. I'm really pleased with it. So before I take the motherboard out, I'm just going to clean the old thermal paste off. So I'll do that with a cotton bud. Just one cotton bud is enough, clean enough. Right, so they're all free. I can just lift the board literally at an angle like this. Just hoping the plastic piece falls out, to be honest. That'll do it. It's a bit awkward to lie the PC back down, but that's fine. So this is now free. It's a good idea to have the least amount of wire running as possible. So if I get the heatsink, hold it like this, that's not going to be good enough. So if I were to spin it around, maybe like that, we're not going to have loads of excess wire running. So that's how I'm going to do that. So I want to make sure to keep the processor cooler in this orientation. So I'm going to put it down nice and gently. And then I should be able to stick this through the bottom of the board, which is the reason why we removed it. Right, we've got it. So I'm going to hold on to that fairly firmly. Just got to wiggle the board, get it to drop back down into position. Then hopefully, yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. So now I can put the thermal paste on. They say to put a pea-sized amount in the middle. I always put a bit more on than most people do. As I keep saying, I'd rather have a little bit more and make sure it's guaranteed to apply than have not enough and have it not apply. And I shouldn't have to use stupid force to make this work. Right, there we go. That is on. That's secure. And give it a spin. We can put the screws back. Brilliant. There we go. CPU power, motherboard power, front fan's already plugged in, power button's plugged in, USB is plugged in. I can put my SSD back. Then I can put the GPU back. Cool, GPU's installed. Hello everybody, you might sort of be wondering why it's just cut and I've just appeared. There's a good reason for it. So obviously you just watched me remove the rubbish CPU cooler and put a good CPU cooler in there. But the reality is there was actually a few weeks in the real world between those two clips, because what originally happened is that I took the rubbish cooler out and then put this big sort of copper behemoth in that I got very cheaply, and initially I was very happy with it until I realised that it wouldn't actually fit if I wanted the 140mm fan on the side of the case as well. So I tried shifting the fan to the outside, and then I had to run the wire through the back of the case. It looked rubbish, it wasn't an elegant solution at all, and I wasn't happy with it. So instead of making you watch me remove a cooler to put one in, to remove it, to replace it with another one, I thought, why don't I instead just sort of cut out all that, wasted bit in the middle, get rid of it, and you can just watch me take the cooler out, put the new one in, and it's all fairly coherent, hopefully. So if you're eagle-eyed, you will actually have noticed a couple small changes that had been made to the PC, because the clips of me installing the final CPU cooler were obviously done a lot later after I realised all the mistakes and so on. But either way though, the next part now is for me to drill holes in the front of the case and then mount the 120mm fan and plug that into the board. So I just wanted to put this little bit in the middle just so it isn't such an abrupt jump, because while I was editing it I was struggling to follow, and I thought if I'm struggling to follow and I'm the one who made it, then there's not a chance in hell anyone who's watching will be able to follow. So I hope that clears that up. We're going to get back into the video now. We're going to start drilling the holes in the front of the case. I've come up with a way to put the holes in the front panel that's going to require the least amount of work. All I've got to do is just use a few of the reference points that are built into the case. So there's this thing here, there's that thing there I can use, and this square here. And I can pretty much just flip this thing around. But what I can do is sort of use a 7mm drill bit and just go down here in a line, and then maybe do sort of an extra 2 and an extra 2 and so on until I've pretty much put holes in the majority of the metal that's inside this circle. But if I just sort of say I'm going to do the first sort of, just going to put a hole there, and then we're going to come up by a bit and put one maybe sort of here, up by a bit, and do that and so on. Might be difficult to see, but I've put a bunch of black dots down on the inside. So the theory is if I drill all of those out, we'll have the majority of this material gone, and then I can do a few more just running down that span, I suppose. So to be honest, I think that's going to be more than enough. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27 holes to drill. That's obviously going to be a lot easier than the 272 that I did on the side panel. I've seen better work done, but I've also seen worse work done. So I'm confident that when I put an 8mm drill bit on these and enlarge them, there'll be a lot less space between them, and then this will be good enough. I'm sure it will. There you go. What do you think about that? I'm confident enough that this isn't sharp that I'll happily run my hands over it. I would do the same on the inside, but you get the point. There's a tiny bit of a burr sticking up there actually. I'll get rid of it. But I came up with a method to remove the burrs, and that is to use a drill bit that's much bigger than the hole that you've drilled. That way it won't get pulled through. So a little bit of downwards pressure, pull the trigger for a moment, the drill will go, and then it will stop, and then you move along to the next one, and then it will stop, and so on. You keep doing that. And by doing that, you get this, these obviously aren't the prettiest, but they're completely free of any burr, and you can see that I've put plenty more holes for more airflow in this front panel now. And if I show you them on the other side, you can see they look just as good. There's no sharp burr, there's nothing that's dangerous that I'm going to cut myself on, so I'm going to call that a success. The next minute of footage is unfortunately sped up with a voiceover. The reason for that is that my microphone died, but because it was new to me, I had no idea that, it was actually dead. It turns out it doesn't give you any indication. But anyway, in the footage you can see me reinstalling the motherboard, plugging the power button into it, and then putting a 120mm fan in the case. I later ended up replacing the fan because it was really loud and a bit rubbish, but in the meantime it just meant routing the fan wire through the front of the case, and then reinstalling the thermal sensor. I put it as close to where it went originally as I could, and then just use a zip tie to hold it in place. I then plugged the SD card reader and the USB ports in, which was really easy for once because they have this Lenovo exclusive connector that my Lenovo motherboard also happened to have, so I was able to just plug them in, no modification needed. After doing all of that, I used a bunch of zip ties to cable manage all the extra stuff that I'd added, and then I reinstalled the GPU. The video picks up pretty much after I've installed a 3D printed cover on the front fan, which you'll notice is a bit bigger than it needs to be because I cut the fan hole a bit bigger than I should have. I've taken the new part off of the 3D printer and installed it, and you can see now it's looking really, really good. No matter which angle you look at, everything is covered, and it's covered nicely. This front bezel is very sturdy, very secure. Can literally move the entire case of it. Obviously I'm going to put it straight back. You can also see we have the front USB ports and the SD card reader. There's still of course this gap here, but I have a plan to sort that. There we have it then. What an episode that was. My word, it took a very, very long time to edit. It was really, really difficult to put it all together, but you know, I persevered through there, a bit like I am with this project, and I got there in the end. Now, if you're eagle-eyed, you'll notice that I'm wearing the same t-shirt, the same jumper, and the same strange facial expression that I was, and I'm also doing all the same hand gestures. I've got the same mannerisms as I did when I recorded the intro. That's because the intro was recorded 15 seconds after I recorded the outro. Wait, no, in the other order. Anyway, that's not really important. What is important is, you know, we're nearing the finish line, right? This is part 5. I didn't think it would take this long when I set out. I thought basically I'll do this in 2 or 3 afternoons and I'll be away. 2 or 3 afternoons ended up being 10 or 11 afternoons. 2 or 3 videos ends up being 5 or 6 or possibly 7. But we're chipping away at it. We're cracking on. My mission of turning this E73 into something useful is slowly being realised. And I'm enjoying every step of the process, even the tedious ones, such as drilling all those holes in the side panel. And obviously I live in the future compared to when this stuff is, compared to when you're seeing this stuff. And I can say that in the end, we do have a perfectly working box. I've been using it for the last month, and I'm really looking forward to putting the next episode out so that you can all see the finished product. At least those of you that are interested. If you weren't interested though, if you enjoyed the video, if I taught you something useful, if you just thought, man, does this guy ever stop talking? Does he have a thought that he doesn't say out loud? Then maybe you should hit like on the video, and even better, go down and leave a comment. Comments help that silly black box YouTube algorithm. It means that more people see the videos, we get the repair message spread further, and more people are willing to do silly things such as picking up a pedestal fan they find on the pavement, taking it home, fixing it, and then patting themselves on the back in the summer when they're nice and cool and everyone else is hot and Asda doesn't have any fans for sale. Even better, by the way, if you go and hit subscribe so you can hear the ramblings of a madman, but more importantly, see part 6 and see all the other cool stuff that I've got in the pipeline. And I say it every time, but there is some pretty damn cool stuff in the pipeline. We've got basically a PlayStation 5 APU soldered to a motherboard that I'm modding and hacking. I've got an old iPod dock that I'm going to try and turn into a Bluetooth speaker because the dock is faulty, but it's a really nice quality one, so I don't want to see it go in the bin. Obviously, part 6 is coming out, and then all of the things basically beyond this episode. Subscribing's free. You can always change your mind if you don't like it. If you don't like these videos, should I say. So you don't really have anything to lose. And like I say, I'd appreciate it. It would help me out. And maybe, just maybe, I might actually say something useful to you for once. But that's all I've got today anyway. I'm going to get on out of here now. I really do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll stay tuned for the next one. But until then, I'll see you later. Take care for now, and goodbye.